Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you all about the latest from MyGrain 5 out October 2nd on Reaper Entertainment. The album has 10 tracks, 62 minutes in length, and this is the band's 5th full-length studio album. It's been 7 years since they released a full-length record, and obviously there's going to be changes, there's going to be growth for the band, and I felt like we saw that growth in the overall sound and even in the vocal approach. The structure of the album is perhaps the thing that got touched the least, at least from the previous records to this record. Very linear, very cohesive, very concise, really showing unity across all 10 tracks and keeping the album together. This is an album that doesn't offer you peaks or valleys, it's just straight to the point, it takes you where it needs to go, and it stays together and stays consistent and cohesive. Now the sound on this album, the overall sound on this album, I felt that it was dictated by the overall keyboard and synthesizer melodies. It became overbearing at times, too much of it in my opinion. I wanted them to include it as a layer, as something that adds texture, that adds atmosphere, definitely would add melody to the tracks, but not to become the main focus or the main driving force of the overall sound of the album. Because what that does is it pushes all the other elements into second plan. It doesn't allow the guitars to be in the forefront, it doesn't allow the guitars to be the conductors of the sound. They almost become what I wanted the keyboards to be, which is a layer, an added feature, a fragrance of melody within the tracks themselves. And what happens after you mix all of these elements together and you allow the keyboards to be in the forefront of the sound and not necessarily be one of the layers in the backdrop, is you take away the heaviness from the record. It's hard to create a heavy album that is driven by melody and keyboard melody, to be precise. The guitars just didn't have the strength to push the volume, to push the intensity, to push the aggression forward. This is true across the record. Obviously, some songs you do get a peek of what it could be if you allow the keyboards to have a secondary role and the guitars to be in the forefront. It's not like necessarily every single song is going to sound the same. You obviously have songs that have a different dynamic, a different structure, a different approach, and to me those showcase what they could have done across the whole record. But overall, when you look at this album, it really is stripped away from heaviness. The drums are consistent, the bass is consistent, those two elements together are very consistent on all 10 tracks. Not super heavy, but providing the necessary foundation, the necessary baseline in which you can build everything upon. To me, it's just how they constructed the tracks and pushing the guitars, it felt, to a second plan and allowing the keyboards to dictate the mood, the atmosphere, and the drive of each and every single track. That coexistence of guitars and keyboards didn't work well. I just felt that it took something away from the album. It definitely took heaviness away from the album, and it didn't allow the album to be as balanced as I would like it to be across all the different elements. You could alternate the two elements within the same song. Perhaps that would have been a better approach. But to have the keyboards pushing every single song and being noticeable, being one of the main elements on every single track, definitely took away from the heaviness, and in my opinion, like I said before, it became a little bit overbearing. I, on the other hand, liked the vocals. I really enjoyed the vocals on this album. I enjoyed how dynamic they were, the changes that they provided within the same songs and then on a song-by-song basis. It added life to the record and really added a lot of energy. I like the clean vocals, I like the screaming vocals, I like the harsh vocals, but perhaps more important, I like how they were used within the tracks and then within the album. Understanding the dynamic of the song, trying to use the vocals at times to add heaviness because the guitars had just been stripped away from that heaviness. It was very obvious on some songs that the vocals were trying to do what I wanted the guitars to be doing all along, but it's not enough. The melody from the keyboards were just overpowering, that the vocals alone, without a huge presence from the drums and bass, without a huge presence from the guitars, the vocals alone are not enough to really hold that level of intensity, that level of aggression, that level of heaviness all the way up to the top. So overall, like I said, this is an album that works, is very melodic, it's very cohesive. It doesn't really deviate. It doesn't have tracks that don't feel like they don't belong on this record. Every single track feels like it's there and it's there for a reason, and it works with the overall soundscape, with the overall approach that the album has. But to me, it's not a heavy album at all. It's a very melodic, very stripped, very electronic, keyboard-driven album, but not a heavy record, and I was expecting the album to have a lot more heaviness across the 10 tracks, or at least have a better balance of heaviness and melody within the 10 tracks that make up this album. Now, as far as songs are concerned, I want to start off with The Way of the Flesh. This is my favorite track on the album, perhaps the one that merges those keyboards with the guitars and allows the guitars to be heavier, the one that's the most predominant in that way of construction, in that way of delivery. I love how it sounds. It's a driven track, great tempo from the start all the way to the finish. The vocal changes add enough dynamic elements to the song to really give you these up and down roller coaster ride type of vibe within the track itself, but the chorus wins the track over. The melodic sound on the chorus is just absolutely magnificent, and then when the vocals come in, they bring some heaviness with them, so you have this perfect balance of melody and heaviness in the way it comes across, making the chorus very substantial, making the chorus a lot bigger, gaining volume, and really becoming the focal point, the epicenter of how this song is constructed. A song that has that perfect blend of melody and heaviness, becoming a perfect melodeath song, a song that I wanted to see more of it on this album, but unfortunately this one kind of gives you a glimpse of what could be, but not necessarily a glimpse of what it is. The solo on this track is also phenomenal. It really adds melody, it adds strength, and it adds that driving force that this song needs. But once again, this is a track that's built around how melodic and how impactful the chorus is, and it works phenomenal across all the different elements. Next, Game of Gods. Great clean vocals on this track. It really fits the sound and it fits the overall vibe of the song. The guitars have a little bit more bite on this track, but they're not necessarily heavy. They just have a little bit more volume. They just have a little bit more presence. The vocal changes in the pre-chorus and chorus are really important because they add volume, they add power, they add space, but they not necessarily make the track heavier. But they definitely change the way the song feels and the way the song looks. Still including clean vocals in the layers, it also increases the volume because now you have a lot of different elements at you. You not just have one single vocal line coming, you have multiple layers to the vocals, which once again doesn't necessarily make the song heavier, but it creates volume, which is an important thing when you have super melodic tracks. And this one is a very melodic song, specifically once again in the chorus. It allows the track to be dynamic, it allows the track to have this change between verses and chorus, because this is a track that really breaks those two worlds. It really divides itself between the verses, the more powerful, robust verses, with a more melodic approach in the chorus. But overall, very well put together song. Another song that has a great melodic solo that really pulls in the energy that the chorus has, and then it expands upon it and really pushes into the forefront. But overall, I love the construction and I love the approach of this track. Last but not least, starts Fading Black. Very symphonic type cinematic song from the opening. You just feel like this is almost going to be a symphonic song, more a symphonic melodic track more than a melodic death metal track. It just has a lot of symphonic elements that overpower the overall soundscape of the track, the overall way of the song, the way the song feels and the way the song is coming at you. And once again, because it has that symphonic element, it becomes very cinematic in how it feels and how it sounds. The keyboards really dominate the sound of this track, and that's where you get that symphonic presence within the song. The guitars and drum, they have volume, they have sound, and they bring some heaviness. But overall, the keyboard melodies really become the predominant factor. But this is a song that has different approaches. It has three different approaches. You have the verses, the pre-chorus, and the chorus. Each one of them gives you something different. One element is going to be heavier, the other one is going to have a mixture of both, and then the other one is going to be a lot more melodic. I felt like the pre-chorus was perhaps the heavier portion of the song when you compare it with the other two. And then the chorus definitely having a lot more melody, which allows it to be more robust, to be more catchy, to be more hooky. Perfect way of constructing a song and creating a song that has three different levels of sound, three different approaches that give you a really interesting up and down feel, a very dynamic, fluid approach from top to bottom. This is it, guys. This is MyGrain with 5 out October 2nd on Reaper Entertainment. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.